President Trump defending his move to pull troops out of Syria as Turkey attacks a U.S. ally for a second day. Here's what he said just moments ago. Listen.
We had a big victory. We left the area. I don't think the American people want to see us go back in with our military, go back into that area again. We won. We left the area. I don't think we want to go back in. Let's see what happens. We are going to possibly do something very, very tough with respect to sanctions.
So there is a bipartisan duo of senators pushing for sanctions targeting Turkey's president and military. Here now is retired Marine Lieutenant Colonel Dakota Wood. Colonel, good to see you. Thank you for being here. The Turkish president is actually bragging about killing over 100 what he calls terrorists in Syria. But aren't the people being killed our allies who actually helped us destroy the ISIS caliphate? And should we be doing more here to prevent that?
Yeah, well, first reports are always wrong, so we want to be a healthy skepticism on this. We don't have eyes on the ground. So, what the Turks are reporting, even what the Kurds are reporting, it takes a while to sort through all the details on this. But, Turkey has had an issue with the Kurds since Turkey was formed in the 1920s. So this is nothing new in terms of the peoples against each other. But I think Erdogan's approach here is certainly very heavy-handed.
Thank you for joining us. It's Christina Partsinevelos, and I want to focus on the fact that, yes, Obama did this too. He pretty much ignored the Kurds, or cut ties with the Iraqi Kurds back in 2011. But in your opinion, Colonel, do you believe that this decision to pull out is reckless on three fronts? The first one being the ISIS resurgence, the possibility of that. The second front being that you're catching your allies by surprise when we really need to at least keep some allies on our plate. And then the third point is the wrong footing your own staff. It seems like a lot of people within the White House were unaware of this move.
Well, people who criticize not being aware are usually the ones who wanted to be consulted first. So when they're not part of the decision, then they criticize they weren't part of the process. But I don't think it's reckless. I think that the president talks with his advisors. He usually doesn't get very quick responses, or the establishment drags its feet, and he finally makes a decision and we move on. So what he's trying to account for are what are our interests. We don't want refugees flowing through Europe. We don't want this to be a sanctuary for terror groups. In terms of Islamic State, conditions are dramatically different in Syria than they were a couple of years ago. And we want some kind of a sanctuary in place for the Kurdish people. And I think those can be accomplished without a serious, significant U.S. military presence.
Lieutenant Colonel, this is Gary Kalpam. Thanks for being here. There's one big thing that I just don't understand. We have been told for a long, long time Erdogan is just a bad guy with bad intentions, and it looks like we just put the ball in his hand, and the first thing he does, the first initial thing he does, is attacks and kills. We don't know how many. It could be 100, could be 10, but that's his first move. Doesn't that worry you in any way, shape, or form that this is the guy that's heading this up at this point in time?
Yeah, he's not making a lot of good decisions. Buying the S-400 air defense system from Russia, more authoritarian in his rule, prisoning of senior military officials and academics following the reported coup. So he doesn't have a good track record, but Turkey as a country has been a longstanding ally. We certainly use Incirlik as a strategic gateway into the region. So the PKK, which is the terrorist element that even our own State Department has recognized as such since 1997, has been problematic. They do get some support from factions of the Kurds, and trying to sort good from bad in that very chaotic region is difficult. So we hope that he doesn't use violence, trying to understand where his perspective is. But as the president has said, we have lots of tools to try to rein him in economically and through diplomatic pressure.
Right. So another question. It seems we all know that President Trump is extremely transactional, and it seemed to me that there was a bargain made where he was going to allow Turkey to do this, create this buffer zone, if you will, in exchange for Turkey taking hold of and maintaining the tens of thousands of prisoners that are currently interred in Syria. And which are really a big problem. Trump's been asking Europeans to take these ISIS fighters and so forth. Nobody wants them. My guess is Erdogan said he would do that. Do you think that's maybe what happened here?
In part, a lot of those detention centers are actually outside of the safe zone. Whether it's 10 miles or 20 miles in has really been a part of debate. But yes, a lot of European countries are criticizing the move. They don't have troops in the ground or skin in the game. They won't repatriate their own citizens who came to help Islamic State. Turkey has been playing host to about 3.7 million war refugees out of Syria and not getting a whole lot of assistance from the European Union or NATO allies or anything like that. So I could understand there is mounting frustration. Again, the use of military force into these areas to target civilian populations is completely unacceptable. From what the president has said, he understands that and wants to try to rein in Erdogan's basis instincts here.
And Colonel, he's talked about sanctions, but what about something, for example, like calling for the withdrawal of Turkey from NATO? You know, the Kurds are essentially much more Western. They're ex-Israel, much more Western, certainly compared to Erdogan and the increasingly Islamist Turkish government. What about advocating that Turkey be kicked the heck out of NATO because of this violence against the Kurds?
Right. Yes, that's been interesting, is that there really isn't a formal mechanism for kicking somebody out. So you would have to get all the NATO members together and decide if you're going to take that kind of an extreme step. And we have an incident where there's a moment in time against the backdrop of 70 years or so of NATO history. So do you want to, do that nuclear weapon, right, in kicking somebody out when maybe there are other ways to resolve this in a much more diplomatic, peaceful, economic sort of way?
Colonel, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate your expertise. Please come back and see us, all right?